All right. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Carl Hart, who is a esteemed psychopharmacologist by training and by recreation, it seems also. And it's really a great honor to have him come and talk to us a little bit about one of his papers that he's published in psychopharmacology, demonstrating some of the positive effects of drugs that are often demonized in our world of neuroscience here, in this case, methamphetamine. So thank you, Dr. Hart, for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Happy to do anything for psychopharmacology.
Great. Okay, so could you tell us about the main finding of the paper that you'll be telling us about? The title being Methamphetamine Attenuates Disruptions in Performance and Mood During Stimulated Night Shift Work, which was published in Psychopharmacology in 2003.
Yeah, that was one of my first papers studying humans, certainly one of my first papers with methamphetamine. And the main finding was that we saw that methamphetamine, just like D-amphetamine, attenuates disruptions on performance that are caused by fatigue or shift change sort of disruptions. And so methamphetamine, like you would expect, it's a stimulant, and then it attenuated the performance-based disruptions. And it also improved mood, which is also important.
Great. And how did you decide to do this study?
Well, I did 4 years in the military, and so in the Air Force. So when you think about our U.S. military, many soldiers or soldiers who are in sensitive jobs, they take stimulants like amphetamines, and they take sedatives like and benzodiazepines to help them sleep, help the stimulants, of course, to help them stay awake when they should be asleep. And so I collaborated with John Caldwell, who at the time was a colonel in the Air Force, and he was studying the effects of stimulants in aviators. And we had this model where we could bring people into the lab and they could sleep with us for, I don't know, 2-3 weeks at a time. And so we came up with this study where we would have them wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and then do computerized tasks for about 8 hours during the day. And then we'd have them do that for about 5 days. And then we would abruptly shift their change, their shift schedule change, such that we would wake them up at midnight. And then we'd have them work from about 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we do that for about 5 days. Then we would abruptly change their schedules. And then when you do that sort of abrupt shift change schedules, you see disruptions in performance. These the disruptions are brought on by abrupt shift change, and they're also brought on by fatigue, because people sometimes have problems shifting from one shift to the next. But then we figured that if we gave stimulant drugs, we could attenuate these disruptions. We chose methamphetamine because people like John Caldwell in the military had already done amphetamines. And so we wanted to see if methamphetamine would perform like D-amphetamine, because the chemicals look almost identical, and turns out they produce almost identical effects, certainly when given orally.
Yeah, and both, as you know, I'm sure, are prescribed for ADHD as well. So they're under our federal rules at the moment considered medically useful drugs, unlike some others that are in other categories, as you also know.
That's exactly right. Many people don't know that methamphetamine is FDA approved, like you said. It's FDA approved to treat obesity as well as ADHD, whereas D-amphetamine is approved to treat narcolepsy and ADHD.
Great. And is there anything else that you think we really need to know still on this line of research, following up your study, for example?
Yeah, I really like this paper because it's one of the papers that show that it's really about the context in which drugs are used. Because if we think about just the name methamphetamine has been so vilified, or it has this negative connotation in our pop culture. And that's largely to do with how it's being used in certain situations or conditions. People are taking it very high doses in the natural ecology, sometimes intravenously, and those people might be experiencing problems before they take the drugs, but the drug is oftentimes blamed for these problems. But when you see that the drug is given under conditions like we gave the drug, relatively low doses, 5-10 milligrams doses, given orally, and given in a situation where people are allowed at least an 8-hour sleep period, and they are also given 3 meals a day. Given under those conditions, you can see the drug produces beneficial effects and not the negative effects that you are oftentimes told about from the media clippings that do not take into account the conditions under which these drugs are taken.
Great, very interesting. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Hart. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate your efforts towards psychopharmacology, the journal in the field.
Thank you very much for having me.
Goodbye.